It's funny how so many people get out of school, they think I'm going to get a job.
Or is it like a 40-hour work week that you can barely get through, or is it a 60-hour work week that you can't wait to start every day? So you got to choose your poison on that one.
Entitled.
If you're new here, hello, welcome. If you're a frequent viewer, it's been a while, huh? But also don't get overwhelmed by the length of this video. The goal of this channel has always been to share my experience as a designer and help those who are interested in design. So today, we are going to be looking specifically at toxic work culture in the field of architecture. This can apply to design in general, but for the purposes of the video being criticized, we're going to focus on architecture. To catch you all up to speed, SCI-Arc, or the Southern California Institute of Technology, dropped a controversial video recently discussing how to be in an office. Originally a live stream, it's been met with some criticism, to say the least. SCI-Arc prides itself on being an avant-garde school and on the leading edge of design and architecture. The video properly demonstrates the issues within the industry. However, I don't think that was the intended effect. If anything, SCI-Arc has caused people to voice their negative experiences within the field. So maybe they are the industry leaders they aim to be? Before we begin, I don't harbor any ill will toward the speakers. They are all successful in their own ways and we shouldn't take that away from them. However, perpetuating toxic work culture should be called out. The original video was an hour and 20 minutes, but I've shortened it and sprinkled in my commentary. I'll rejoin you at the end to discuss the aftermath and my final thoughts. Enjoy! First, let's meet our characters for this discussion. On the left, we have Dwayne Euler, professor and co-founder and owner of Euler Wu Collaborative. In the center, we have Marika Trotter, history and theory coordinator at SCI-Arc and employee at Tom Wiscombe Architecture. But as of editing this video, has been suspended from SCI-Arc for high-pressure office culture. And lastly, we have the heavy hitter and breakout character, Margaret Griffin, professor and founder and co-owner of Griffin and Wright Architects. We have quite the established and accomplished panel. Let's hear their advice for future graduates and their career success.
The topic today is how to be in an office. What is your number one piece of advice for these fine, bright-eyed and bushy-tailed students sitting before us today about how let's not talk about yet about how to get hired. Let's also not talk about how to get fired. Both of those are useful skills. But could we just talk about first how to be in an office?
How to be in an office presupposes you somehow entitled to be in an office, but I don't think that's the case. I don't think that anyone is entitled to be in an office. We like to think of our place where we work as more like a studio than an office. That's number one.
What's the difference between an office and a studio?
I would say it's an atelier. It's a place where we do creative work. Maybe an office is more possibly corporate. Maybe an office is more 9 to 5. I think an atelier is a place where there's a kind of a buy-in of a kind of vision of what you're working on. I think office culture there's different kinds of office culture. There's like, let's say, for lack of a better way of understanding it, like there's a large kind of corporate, there's maybe middle size, and then there's maybe boutique firms. So I think, like, to me, it's less about how to be in an office, and it's more about how to think of working for whoever you're going to work for as an extension of your education, right? Like choosing the next lessons that you want to learn. What do you want to learn next? To me, that has to do with who might you want to learn it from.
So number one tip on how to be in an office or a studio or an atelier is put yourself in the mode of learning.
In architecture, part of your pedigree is not just where you went to school, not just your portfolio, but who you worked for. I think in architecture there's a kind of pedigree to who you work for, and that's really important.
It's funny how so many people get out of school, they think I'm going to get a job. Like just a job. And maybe one way to answer that is to say, you're not going out to get a job, you're going out to set the trajectory for the rest of your life. If you think, I got a long career ahead of me, particularly as an architect, it's a long, long career. You don't want to shoot off in the wrong direction from the beginning. You want to kind of put it in perspective and think, this is the rest of my life. I need to figure out how to couple what it is I loved about school with what I love about life in general together, and somehow make sure that that first step that you take is the right step.
But then I kept looking for the job I really wanted. So sometimes you need to take just a job.
Yeah, I
And then
told my
that's okay.
story earlier. I did exactly the same thing. I took a job I knew I didn't want.
Yeah.
I don't think anyone can go wrong taking any job for a year.
Yeah.
Any job. Corporate, small, barely doing architecture, any job. The difficulty there is that lots of people take that job and they get comfortable for various reasons. Money, life, it takes a different course, whatever.
If you take a job, which I've definitely done as well, you take a job and you know it's a job, that's one thing. But if you approach what is actually your opportunity and you fail to commit to your own future, so I would say my number one bit of advice for how to be in an office is, once you get into an office where you know that you can learn and where that opportunity is being granted to you, and you feel like you have made a consequent decision, you've sought something out rather than just having to take what's available, the most important thing that you need to do is commit. I'll say that again. I think the most important thing that you need to do is commit. And what I mean by that is start to invest time, energy, focus, intelligence, aspiration, care, all of the things that you would give to something that you loved and cared about, that was consequent to you, something that felt important, something you felt passionate about. To give all of those things to that opportunity that's in front of you, and to begin to invest yourself in that opportunity. Because what ends up happening is that when you invest, the person that you're working for, she will invest in you. And then you end up with a situation where you have mutual investment. And when you have mutual investment, you're building more than your career. You're building your character, you're building your relationships, you're building your reputation. And all of those things in a field like architecture, particularly your reputation, I will say, those are things that are more consequent than how much money you're making for a particular year, or even whether or not you're getting to work immediately on the kinds of projects that you might find interesting.
I'm not looking for people who want to be in my office. I'm looking for people who want to contribute to what we're doing. Contribute to what we're doing. Contribute to what we're doing. I'm looking for people who want to be a second set of eyes on everything we're doing, want to know how to ask the right questions, want to try to work as efficiently as possible. When a task is finished, they want to hop on the next task. It's really hard to make a living in architecture, honestly. A lot of us have a bunch of side hustles going on, right? 2, 3, 4 side hustles at a time to make things work and to be able to do the kind of work that we want to do. So when we're in the office, we need to accomplish stuff as strategically and efficiently as possible. And that ability to kind of work quickly and
Not just quickly, but accurately. Accurately and quickly is extremely valuable.
Well, I would also hope that it would not always be so binary, that you would be having to treat working in an atelier or a studio, and I like the way that you're using those terms, Margaret, as the thing that you have to get through so that you can enjoy your life.
Yeah. Your life and your work, if you're going to be happy, your life and your work essentially have to become the same thing. I don't know anyone in any profession, and I'm not just talking about architecture, in any profession who really doesn't enjoy their, if they don't consider their job an essential part of their life, they're pretty unhappy at their job. And that's not a great way to exist, going to work, disliking your job, and then getting home at the end of the day and saying, "Whew, I can finally live my life." Horrible way to be. I'd figure out what about your job it is that makes you really happy, and accept that is your life. So you better figure out how to kind of steer it in the way that's going to make you happy every day. That doesn't mean every minute you're going to be happy. Sometimes you got to work harder than you want to be. But what should make you happy about it is the reward that comes with, the moments of satisfaction, of completion, of creativity that, are especially uplifting in a creative field like this.
yeah, which is not to say that there's not going to be days when you're like, to this day I'm still having, like recently I had some really challenging
No, I keep coming back to the word commitment because I liked also what you said about marriage. It's like marriage. Marriage is also a matter of committing through ups and downs. But it's like, but what a terrible thing to commit to if it's not aligned with your passions. Now, fortunately, I will say that there are such a broad range of things to do within this field. Although the field of architecture might seem quite small and quite specific, there are so many ways to be part of architecture that I'm very hopeful that even if you start out in a particular role or doing a particular type of thing, you're thinking, oh my gosh, this is terrible, I treat it like a job, I need to go home and do 3 hours of like loofah, self-care or something just to kind of recover from what I had to do during the day. There's more to come. There's so many ways. You might decide, what if you wake up one day, I just put this on the table. What if you wake up one day and you're like, holy shit, I actually am not that good at schematic design.
Schematic design is like the holy grail of like a talented architect. They come in and they're like, that's how it's going to be, the massing, whatever.
What if you wake up one day and you suddenly realize there are like 7 other people in your particular atelier that are better than you, and actually what you really like is kind of organizing and detailing and great. Actually, that's super valuable. Being able to put together a neat spreadsheet, being able to balance quantities with qualities. There's being able to understand codes and to spec things accurately and carefully, being able to communicate with clients, being able to bring in new clients. If you have the social superpowers to locate and lure in new clients, you have a future, a passionate future in architecture, for sure. So I will say that sometimes it takes time to find the things that make it worthwhile to be invested in the field. And that's one thing that you can really lean into when you're just starting out. As you guys are preparing to enter the profession,
the year before I went to grad school, I waitressed at night to save up money to in addition to working. I worked as an architect and I had a waitressing job at night to make extra money to support my grad school. And I wanted to go to grad school because I wanted to be a professor.
just so you guys know, it is absolutely not true that you make more money as a starting salary as someone who has graduated from an M-Arc than
Right.
someone who has graduated from a B-Arc. There is no bump. There is no, let me just say that again. There is no bump. What you get paid more for is experience. And the kind of experience that's the most valuable is the kind that goes 2 to 3 years minimum, or 3 to 5 years maximum at the same office.
Because that's how long it takes to learn anything in this field and to see significant projects through all the way. So the 3-year window, 5-year window that my colleagues are talking about here that's a consequent figure, because it allows you to actually gain what then is financially remunerative experience.
In that 3 years, who do you go to work for? Because you don't want to go to the one that pays the most. Because that's probably not the best office for you. It's said with the implication that you get out of undergrad, you pay off a little of that, or at least you stop the bleeding, and then you go to grad school because you've worked for those 3 years. But often those 3 years you want to go out and you want to work for the best people that you can, and that depending on the type of office that you really want to go to, often those are not the ones that pay the best. Hopefully they're paying you a living wage, but things even in the last 10 years they're so different, and they're so difficult for students who owe a lot of money coming out of undergrad, and there aren't a lot of good scenarios.
You come out of SCI-Arc, you guys are going to have a lot of skills. It's okay if you even go to work for a developer. Like, not everyone wants to be an architect in the same way. There's so many ways to leverage your education as an architect. You can work as an art director. You can work, for a developer. You can work for a contractor. Maybe you do want to figure in a certain amount that you need to make. Others of you might have more leeway on that. But we know that big offices are going to pay more than small offices, and it's not because small offices try to take advantage, it's just their fees are less, in order for them to compete. So Gensler, they have the biggest fees of anybody in the city, and they can afford to pay more. But if you go to Gensler, maybe you're going to be drawing bathrooms for 1 year. There's different lessons that you're going to learn in different kinds of firms.
Even if you're working for the let's say a boutique office with very good design, because you're passionate about the work that they do, and they're paying you design office. That's what we'd call it. Like, there's design offices, and then there are corporate offices. And there's what design offices can afford to pay, and there is actually a market rate for that. And then there's a corporate office rate, which is higher. Or is it like a 40-hour work week that you can barely get through, or is it a 60-hour work week that you can't wait to start every day? So you got to choose your poison on that one. Like a 40-hour work week that you can barely get through, or is it a 60-hour work week that you can't wait to start every day?
Like a 40-hour work week that you can barely get through, or is it a 60-hour work week that you can't wait to start every day?
when you commit to a project, when you commit to a firm, when you commit to a principal, and you really invest, I guarantee you, they will invest in you. They will pay you as much as they possibly can and be happy to do it. Now, does that mean that you're going to become a millionaire in your first 10 years of working with a firm while you apprentice and learn how to start your own business if you so desire? Probably not. But will you feel like you're living a passionate and fulfilled life and you're working hard towards something that matters to you and not something that only matters to some faceless, nameless, late capitalist corporation? Yes. And honestly, I think it's worth the investment because ultimately it's not an investment in them, it's an investment in you. And it's an investment also in our futures.
It would be disingenuous of us not to acknowledge your pain. And so that's why I say that, is I think we understand that, and we didn't face that same kind of thing. And so while I can be a Debbie Downer, it's largely because I want to, express what I actually feel.
Wait, what didn't we face?
But paying for your own education 20 years ago was really different than paying for your own education through undergrad and grad today.
Yeah, fair enough.
Well,
I had to figure out how to do it all on my own, but I could. And I think most people going to schools like SCI-Arc and an Ivy League, I don't know how you do it on your own today.
Side hustle. I'm going to repeat it. Side hustle. Several side hustles.
It'll get you part of the way, but
The number one thing is just get shit done. Doesn't matter what you're doing, get shit done.
Get your fucking ass up and work.
And be, I don't know, like, the ability, I think what I learned in architecture school is I learned how if I work hard enough, I can get shit done.
And I can get shit done in this level, and this level, and this level, and this level. I can just get shit done here, get shit done here, get shit done here, get shit done here, and then suddenly all the shit's done. Like just getting stuff done comes from action.
Get your fucking ass up and work.
I'm gonna go to space one day. I want to go to the moon. I want to be on that spaceship that they're all designing. I believe in technology. I believe in the advancement of technology, and I'm not sure I can save the planet, but I don't know. I don't mind being on the first plane out of it.
now I can tie that back to being in an office. I can say that the most valuable people in the office are the people who get shit done.
Get your fucking ass up and work.
And by that I don't mean people who are always the hardest workers.
That's right, yeah.
It's if I say, man, how are we going to get this installation from our backyard to hanging in space and, you know, in the Midwest? And somebody comes back a couple days later and says, I found a trucking company that'll do it for this amount. I called a person in Columbus, Indiana. They've got riggers that'll get a forklift out there. And they've solved all these problems that I hadn't even anticipated. It's that person who's actually thinking, like, how do I solve the problems that they haven't even thought of yet that are unbelievable. They often picked up the phone.
Yeah.
The phone.
If I can tell you
not
anything.
Not to say don't email, but pick up the phone. It's amazing.
No, in my office, it's like, if
Get your fucking ass up and work.
So I think that we've all felt the very public push for like mass advocacy and mass action as of late, especially in terms of global climate change. And I'm wondering how you guys think that that affects, or do you think that that affects the youth disillusionment? And do you think that's a negative or positive effect that it has?
So I think that it's an entirely positive fact. It's one of the things that makes me, speaking of optimism, it's one of the things that makes me optimistic about your generation, is the ability to push in consequent, quick ways through mass collaboration for consequent change. Part of that is technological, but also part of that is just massive social intelligence that I think far outstrips our generation. Where I think the kind of the mass disillusionment thing is factors into that is when we are faced with a problem that seems to be more enormous than what we can imagine finding a solution for, it can lead to some pretty nihilistic thoughts. And for me, the idea of mass collective action that we see in your generation is one of the great pushbacks against that kind of nihilism. You know, nihilism is small thinking. You won't find creative people who are nihilistic in their approach to their future. You will find creative people like Margaret and Dwayne who are deep optimists, not naive optimists, but optimists in the sense of being ingenious, creative, engaged in the world that they find.
Yeah, like I can't identify with disillusionment. I can't even identify with that.
The idea that there is a kind of uprising around social justice issues, obviously what caused those is leading to a lot of disillusionment. How could it not? It's the idea that this has kind of come to the fore and people are rising up against this that is what's so positive and uplifting. But what's left, though, is it's too damn slow. You know, so, like, how could that also not lead to some disillusionment? So, you know, you go out there, you keep fighting for it, and, you know, you get a little frustrated when you don't win every battle. But you keep insisting. It's moving too damn slow.
Yeah, I guess maybe part of my attitude about it comes from the fact that, you know, I was a young female architecture student in the 80s, the early 80s. This was not an easy time to be a girl in the architecture field, and I had to overcome a lot of bullshit, honestly. And if I had, I had no time to be disillusioned. I had no. It's in that regard that I don't have a lot of sympathy for it, because I needed to overcome so many things, and that's where my optimism really helped me, because not only am I optimistic, but sometimes I'm naive. So sometimes I don't know if someone, like let's say I'm on site and there's a contractor and he doesn't think I know what I'm talking about. Well, I'm so naive that I don't know that. I just think he's an idiot. And maybe he, you know what I mean? Like, so I didn't have time to worry about what others, like disillusionment wouldn't have helped me. So the only way I could help me was to like overcome any obstacle that was put in front of me. And there was a lot of obstacles. The only way to overcome all those obstacles was to be slightly naive and very, very optimistic. And then just don't stop. Just like never give up. I would say those three things is was part of the secret sauce for me.
Here at this school, I struggle with, because I also work in the field, and I struggle with, I guess, separating work from school. So how do I guess, merge the lines, or just, yeah, pretty much, how do I like merge the lines together?
For me, it would be not try to merge it right now. Let it be compartmentalized for a moment. Because I think sometimes what we're maybe working on in school, and this is the case for my students, is I'm working on stuff in the studio here at school that we can't always do in practice at the office. So we're trying to work on things that are beyond what we can maybe do in our practice. And so maybe you have to suspend your animation for a moment, right? And allow yourself to have kind of two ways of thinking about things. And it doesn't mean that you... that the things that you're doing in work are wrong, and it doesn't mean that the stuff you're doing in school is wrong. It's just that it's two different parts of your brain for the moment that eventually, as you gain more facility, will be merged and will be able to then work together. But to try to merge it now might be premature.
If I'm talking to these two, I say you absolutely have to merge those two. If you can't take your design ambition and figure out how to give it real meaning, in a way on the most practical, mundane level, real meaning that enriches it in some way, what are you doing? But I do think that there is a point as you're developing as an architect where you do have to kind of set what you know aside and go like, I'm going to pretend that doesn't exist to try to get to a different place and eventually merge those two.
Yeah, when I was doing my undergraduate, which was my professional degree, it was a B-Arc. I was going to school. Honestly, the only way I could even begin to afford college was I went to school at night. I was at a night school that was designed to let you work full-time during the day. So I was working at a firm during the day, and then I was being asked to do these really zany things at night, so maybe something similar to what you're describing. And about halfway through, I had a professor who was really good. There weren't, not all my professors were really good, but this one was really good. And she said to me, Marika, right now, the only way you're going to get the maximum value out of this education, out of this studio, is if you learn to suspend your disbelief. You can't come into it with a kind of judging mentality where you are trying to already assess the value of what you're being taught and even think about how you might change it. Set that aside for now. You can do that later. Right now, suspend your disbelief and just approach it with wonder and curiosity and take what you can. And for those students that are my students this semester, you may have heard me saying something similar to you. It was a great life lesson for me, and it's proven to be valuable over the years in many different contexts. The more of your future, including, I would say, working in someone else's firm, by the way, as you gain experience and as you learn to do the things that you're passionate about, the more of your life that you can approach with a sense of wonder and openness and curiosity, rather than surety, judgment, a sense of ideologically knowing already what the right thing is to do, the faster you will grow into the best version of yourself.
Couldn't agree more. Couldn't agree more. A sense of childlike wonder is what I see in my favorite architects who are not young. I'm not going to call them the other word. Are those who still have a sense of childlike wonder. It's such a beautiful thing, and it applies to every aspect of life.
I want to kind of backtrack the conversation to the first question that was asked about sort of commitments and the ethics around commitments. I kind of disagree with the point about commitment that was brought up earlier on. I think in some cases you are put in situations where it is okay to break a commitment, especially when the commitment you thought you were getting into is not the one you're actually into in the end. I was recently put in that situation, unfortunately, so had to break a commitment. But I don't think that should in any way sort of affect this idea of reputation. And I think that sort of attitude and behavior is why architecture and the profession as a general is really lagging behind so many other fields in terms of pay, salary, and work-life balance, etc. So yeah, I think I also believe that it's a subject that's not really talked about at the school a lot. What do you think are the factors that are still causing architecture to really lag behind other fields?
Well, that's a lot to unpack. I come from a place of we all make our own choices, right?
I don't get to do your choices. You don't get to do my choices. My daughter doesn't make my choices. I don't make her choices. I don't make my, you know what I mean? I come from a place of everyone makes their own choices. So
Your education as an architect, especially at a place like SCI-Arc, sets you up for, I don't know, just thousands of ways that you could be an entrepreneur. You can, you know, start an ice cream business. You can start printing, 3D printing food. Like, there's so many SCI-Arc graduates that have gone on to, so, you know, there's art directors. There's like, you could basically do anything you want with your education. So I don't know.
I think we could mostly agree that the idea of commitment in general to anything you do, whether you're an athlete or a rock star or whatever, the general idea of committing to a thing is often what makes you great at it and makes you get better at it. But is commitment unconditional? No. You can find yourself in situations where, you know, it doesn't make sense. You know, what makes the profession lag behind? You know, there are a lot of things. I think more than anything, I said I was anti-AIA earlier, kind of half jokingly. I think it's largely that it as a profession has tried to dig itself into territories that have lacked its value as a creative effort that contributes something. And I think we ought to be fighting to regain that value. And when we do that, we ought to insist on being paid for that value. You know, at the end of the day, often a lot of value is found in what you get paid. It's not meant to be that way, but unfortunately we live in a world where money defines a lot of things. And so we got to fight for that. It'll give us cultural value back, unfortunately, you know, but so we got to fight for it. We got value. We got to fight for it.
Yeah, and I wouldn't agree that we lag, quote unquote, lag behind.
Yeah, that's maybe not. I don't know that you meant in exactly those terms, but there are cases where we're struggling to find our cultural value in the way certain fields can.
Well, like, for instance, so my daughter's a mathematician, okay? If you're in STEM, you can make crap loads of money. But she's choosing to work for a firm for less money because that firm is going to give her more responsibility. So she could work for a different firm where she could make more money, like her roommate, but she's choosing to work for a firm where she's not going to make as much money, even though she's a mathematician, but she's going to get more responsibility. She's going to meet the clients. She's going to have more a voice at the table. So this choice happens in all fields. It's not a choice only in architecture. It's a choice in every single field you can have.
Yeah.
And it has to do with about what kind of lessons do you want to learn.
And it's especially true in any field that involves creativity. True in every field, but especially those that involve creativity because it's easier to find reward in those, and therefore people are willing to make greater sacrifices to do them.
So I don't think it's a problem exclusive to architecture, these sorts of choices that one makes about what kind of career you have. I think a lot of professions have that same exact issue that we see in architecture, having to do with like a big firm versus a smaller firm, what you get to work on a big firm, what you get, the kind of responsibilities you can have at a smaller firm, the kind of opportunities. So it's all about choices. It's all about setting up what you want to learn, how you want to learn.
And it's also raising the issue too, which is good that you put it on the table, Elliot, that it is really important to make sure that you know what expectations are on both sides at the beginning of of starting to work for somebody, or also on our side as employers of bringing somebody on. So being very open and frank in conversation right at the beginning is, I think, a really important thing that sometimes I think students or young professionals can be a little bit frightened to talk about stuff like opening, like, well, but do you really have health insurance, or whatever the worry is. And I would just encourage you to just be to lean in and be very open and ask lots of questions at the beginning, so that things feel clear, and also so that you know that what you're choosing is the right fit at the right time.
So Margaret, you said that people can make their own choices, but what do you think about how the system is set up in the way that a lot of architecture students, when they graduate, they work for like an unlivable wage, and then they still have to do side hustle, but it still doesn't pay the bill. And at the same time, the majority of the students in SCI-Arc are international students, and they cannot work outside of school, and they make like under $500 a month. So there's no way that we can, afford SCI-Arc, just do side hustle. So what do you think about the whole system being set up in the way that we felt like we're not getting the most out of it, and feel like we've been tricked into, working in this field and have so much expectation and fulfillment, but those expectations are not met in the industry?
I don't think it's a system. I don't think it's a system. I don't think it's a system. I don't think it's a system.
The only way to overcome all those obstacles was to be slightly naive.
I don't think it's a system. There's plenty of places where you can go and, again, there's Orange County, there's Irvine, there's lots of places you can go in a bigger firm. You can make plenty of money. All of us sitting at this table made choices as well, right? So you just have to do you.
She's got a point. She's an icon. She's a legend. And she is the moment. Now, come on now.
Okay, whatever that means. If doing you means you don't want to be an architect, you don't do it. If doing you means you want to be an architect, then you work with wherever you can get yourself into. I don't think that I can't speak to what you're talking about because my office doesn't work that way. So I don't. There's probably plenty of things I could be doing that I could make a lot more money at. But I personally have developed the side hustle so that I can do what I like and then have choices about what I like. So I don't have to take on projects that I don't want to work on. I purposely made my own firm so that I could do what I like. Like, I positioned myself so I could have my own firm. I just think everyone has to carve out whatever it is that you want to do, but I don't agree that there's not opportunities out there. I don't think that's true. And it's not, getting a job is never easy. I mean, I had my first job when I was 16 years old. I always had a job.
16 years old.
For many, many years, even
so
before I started
to
to
be
be an architect.
Savings from when I was a kid, from working as
for
a
many, many
sales
years,
stress.
even
So
before I
it's,
started to be
my
an
daughter
architect.
had a job.
John
when she
had a
was
job when he was
16.
12 years
In
old.
her
He started,
generation, barely
a
anyone
paper
had
route.
jobs.
You know what I mean? Like, I can't. I'm not identifying with your question because I don't. I think there's plenty of ways for your education to have value, whether that's in the field or not in the field, but even in the field, I don't.
I don't think it's infeasible for you to have value from your education. But if you feel that way, then maybe you're in the wrong field. I don't know. I don't know how else to answer it, but
I think that's true. Many of us, figured out how to work in a corporate office for a little while and then take that short-term gig for a little while because we wanted that experience. And, should you work that, whatever it is, $500 a month job after school long-term? No. But can you find value in a short-term job for a little while? Yeah, possibly. I hope so. But long-term, no.
And as I said, I even worked as a waitress when I had a job as an architect, because I made so little in my job as an architect in a place where I had a lot of responsibility that it wasn't enough, and I had a waitress at night to save money for my grad school. But that was my choice, and I saved enough money to go to grad school, and then I didn't have student debt after I went to grad school, and then but then eventually, as I got older, I started to try to figure out more other kinds of ways of gaining financial freedom, like stocks, buy stocks.
Yes, that should be our next Basecamp is Margaret Griffin, how to invest as an independent woman.
Well, that was quite the experience. Before talking about the aftermath, I do want to highlight some good gems in the video. Marika and Margaret pointed out that you can do so much with your architecture education. I fully agree with this. Architecture education makes you extremely skilled at many things. The design process and design thinking philosophies taught in architecture can be applied to so many things. Dwayne acknowledging both the hardship of the cost of an education in 2022 and the problems that the field faces, causing it to lag behind other industries, is an interesting and valid topic. Like I said before, the aftermath of this video has been met with a lot of criticism, particularly from the younger demographic, many of them calling out the video on social media platforms and causing others to share their experiences with toxic work culture. SCI-Arc students and alumni even had their own discussion on Twitch discussing the matter.
The Basecamp discussion was a very limited and outdated view of the field, shared by people who all come from quite similar backgrounds. There are such a variety of paths you can take and such a wide variety of experiences that all of us who have graduated from SCI-Arc are currently having, and we want to bring that level of diversity to the foreground here tonight.
Coming out of this, what's really important is to, not give the majority of the power to individuals who wield power, but rather to disperse it amongst one another and use that as a way to check the power imbalance that is so rampant in architecture.
In many ways, I did things correctly from the perspective of the people who were in charge of our education. I worked hard, I pulled all-nighters, I assistant taught for pennies, I sucked up to the right people, and I graduated with a job offer from not one, but two professors. I ended up working for both of these professors, one after the other. I went straight from thesis burnout into stressful work environment after stressful work environment. Both experiences were explicitly paid below living wage, with the promise of reputation and windfall salaries dangled like a carrot, but ultimately never delivered on. And while helping to build a project with one of these offices, I was put into the kind of construction site danger that OSHA was created to eliminate. In summary, I subjected myself to significant emotional, financial, and physical harm to try and measure up to the outdated expectations of the academic profession. And all I have to show for it is this story. However, I got lucky. The COVID pandemic forced me to move back to my home country, and a bunch of my alumni peers helped me to get back on my feet and secure a well-paying job working directly on beautiful built projects with a strict 40-hour-per-week schedule and with benefits. Not innovative projects by SCI-Arc standards, but projects that are beautiful, sustainable, and which bring joy to their occupants, on a schedule where I can have a life outside of work, allowing me to place value on more than just my job. I'm sharing my story because I think it's very important for young architects and students to understand that there is no shame, but rather joy in choosing the path of the traditional architect, freed from the exploitation and abuse of academic practitioners and their side hustles. To those who say you have to choose between cutting-edge work and bathroom elevations, I say that every project needs a well-designed bathroom, and the students you have taken advantage of are already used to putting up with shit. I want to commend the SCI-Arc students and alumni who have chosen to speak up at considerable professional risk to themselves.
There's an inconsistency between what the education of architecture looks like and the realities of the practice. And it's a very big gap. And we are going to have to figure out how to close it because, the people that are farther ahead of us, they are part of this system now, that it works for them. They're benefiting from it. They seem to be doing just fine. And so I wanted to point out that this concept that, guys, we're gonna try to work this out, but you got to understand that things are just kind of like this, and there's not much we can do about it. Absolutely not. No, that's not it. This is supposed to be, right? This is supposed to be a radical institution, right? And there's a lot of problems in the profession of architecture. And it seems like the most appropriate collection of thinkers to take on these problems within the profession. I would think they're the ones at SCI-Arc, right? So if I were you, I wouldn't take that as an answer. There's a lot they can do. There's a lot we all can do, right? We are all actively playing a role in this structure, in this very problematic structure, right? We are all complicit with our actions. And it seems to me, the impression that I've gotten certainly is that the leadership of the school seems to have a lot of power. I might be mistaken. Maybe I misinterpreted that. But that's certainly what their behavior points to, isn't it? So please keep that in mind as you move forward. This has to be the first of many discussions you have to keep the pressure on. It has to keep coming. This is not just Band-Aid, okay, cool, this was really nice, guys, have a nice summer. No, this has to mark a beginning.
Comments on the video have been turned off, and based on the live chat comments, I can see why they did that. The dislike ratio is so low, which honestly I'm glad to see, meaning that I'm not alone in seeing how ridiculous their advice was. The school has tried to apologize, but to no avail. Marika and the firm owner of Tom Wiscombe has been exposed practicing some of these toxic work practices and are currently under investigation. Both the firm and Marika have tried to apologize as well. Reactions on architecture websites and forums have not been the best either, with Archinect and Reddit shining light on the situation as well as personal accounts. This does highlight that a lot of practitioners feel the same way. However, the system makes it very hard for people to air out their frustrations without acquiring targets on their backs. I'll link the articles in the description if you're interested. What started as a simple discussion on advice for future graduates has exposed the sad state of the field of architecture. If you're interested in learning more about the problems in architecture, specifically about money, I highly suggest Perspecta 47, Money, written by the Yale Architectural Journal and published by the MIT Press. The book was written in 2014, and yet in 2022, the field is still plagued with the same problems. With that, I'd like to thank anyone still watching. I doubt I'll make another video like this since I'm no longer in the field. I do like to help designers and the overall design community be a better place to work though. Ultimately, I'd like to wish everyone good luck in their endeavors as designers, and for architecture specifically, to do better. Now to finally address Margaret's side hustle mentality. Margaret is highlighting how financially unsustainable running an architecture studio is, and I find it sad that she wears these side hustles as a badge of achievement, when in fact it shows the sad state of the architecture industry. She is telling young graduates that having a job as a fully licensed architect and running their own firm is not good enough. Having a side hustle on top of that isn't enough either. But the truly sad thing is, if someone with that much education and experience struggles to make it in the field, what chances does a fresh graduate have?
Entitled.